Chairman, we're now live.
Thank you very much indeed. Good evening, everybody. I am Councillor Caroline Culver, Chairman of Scrutiny Commission. Members of the Commission present this evening are Councillors Anthony Amatharaj, Howard Wollaston, Jeremy Cottam, Paul Dick, Billy Drummond, Ross McKinnon, Justin Pemberton and Chris Reid. Other members present this evening are Councillor Denise Gaines, Councillor David Marsh, and joining us remotely we have Councillors Richard Sumner and Joe Stewart. Also present to advise and support the meeting are Nigel Lynn, Chief Executive, John Winstanley, Service Director for Environment, Neil Stacey, Network Manager for Highways, Nikki Thomas, Service Lead for Legal and Democratic Services, and Beth Varco, Principal Lawyer, Regulatory and Litigation. Gordon Oliver is the clerk for the meeting, and the meeting is being live streamed via YouTube, and Thomas Radbourne is the Zoom host. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. Please can I ask everyone participating in the meeting to make sure they switch on their microphones when invited to speak directly into the microphone, and to switch them off when finished speaking. If we hear the fire alarm this evening, we must leave the building immediately via the emergency exit. The assembly point is the Dolphin car park. If the lockdown alarm sounds, we will remain seated and await instructions from officers. We will adjourn the meeting until such time as it is safe to proceed. Do members have any questions about the way in which this meeting will be conducted before we proceed? Oh, thank you very much. Do we have any apologies, please, Mr. Oliver?
Yes, Chair. Councillor Jeff Mays has given his apologies, and Councillor Billy Drummond is substituting. Councillor Eric Pattendon has also given his apologies, and Councillor Jeremy Cottam is substituting for him. And Councillor Dominic Bowick has given his apologies, and Councillor Howard Wollaston is substituting for him. And Councillor Lee Dillon has also given his apologies.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Oliver. Do members have any declarations relating to the item on the agenda this evening, please? No. Okay, thank you. So moving swiftly on, item number 3, Scrutiny Commission has been asked to consider a member call-in of the executive decision EX 4416 of the 14th of December concerning the Newbury Town Centre pedestrianisation extension trial. The call-in was made by Councillors Ross McKinnon, Dominic Bowick, Richard Sumner, Joe Stewart and Howard Wollaston. I'm going to invite Councillor Denise Gaines, who is Executive Portfolio Holder for Highways, Housing and Sustainable Travel, to give a brief overview of the proposed course of action in relation to the Newbury Town Centre pedestrianisation extension trial. Next, I will invite members who called in the decision to present their reasons and their proposed alternative course of action. I will then invite Councillor Gaines and officers to respond to that. After that, I will invite members of the Scrutiny Commission to make comments or ask further questions of the portfolio holder, officers or call-in members. Members are reminded that debate should focus solely on the matters raised in the call-in and should not introduce any new points. We will then move to the vote. I'm conscious we also have Councillor Marsh with us this evening, who will be invited to make comment after members of the Scrutiny Commission have spoken. Scrutiny Commission is asked to review the executive decision and to resolve either to confirm the executive decision, in which case it would be implemented with immediate effect, or to state its views on the matter and refer the decision back to the executive. The Commission cannot overturn the executive decision. Is everyone content with that process? Great. Okay, so first and foremost, Councillor Gaines, would you like to address us? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the administration wishes to implement an experimental traffic regulation order, an ETRO, rather than pursuing a permanent traffic regulation order, TRO, to ensure that any final and permanent decision which is made based on the actual impact rather than the perception of what the impact may be. Therefore, this trial is specifically designed to assess the actual impact of the proposed restriction on our residents. In response to the call-in of this decision and in consultation with our highways team, I am confident that 1, due regard has been given to our public sector equality duty and Equality Act 2010 S149. 2, that there has been no breach of council duties under Equality Act 2010. 3, The Highways Department Equalities Impact Assessment is robust enough to deal with the requirements of experimental traffic regulation orders, but also recognises that further information could have been provided to evidence their reasoning and confidence in their assessment. 4, another EIA is not required. And 5, a consultation process is not required at this stage, but acknowledges that a 6-month consultation will take place starting on the day of the ETRO, as per ETRO requirements. The Council has a duty to consider how policies and decisions affect people who are protected under the Equalities Act. The purpose of the PSED, which is the Public Sector Equalities Duty, is to make sure that we are carrying out our public functions whilst consistently thinking about how we can promote equality. We must consider, as an authority, and keep reviewing how we are promoting equality. As noted in the call-in, the Council must have due regard, and that's a really important part, due regard to the needs to advance equality of opportunity between persons who share a relevant protected characteristic and persons who do not share these characteristics. The duty under the Equalities Act 2010 does not require the Council to eliminate every negative impact to protect persons. The requirement is that the Council have due regard to removing or reducing these types of negative impact. Considering due regard varies widely in accordance with the circumstances, the period of which it would be in effect, and the nature and scale of its potential consequences. So the level of assessment required to qualify as due regard is likely to be less demanding than if the decision is permanent. That might be especially if the decision was also experimental, as in this case, and was itself conductive to a more robust assessment of equality impacts later in the process, which is what we would do during an ETRO process. We would actually do a consultation for all stakeholders during that period. Our colleagues in Highways have confirmed that in preparing the report and preparing the Equalities Impact Assessment, due regard has been given to our duties under the Equalities Act 2010, and that they have considered who may be affected by this order, including those with protected characteristics. I won't answer the points raised at this moment. I'll wait for other things to be brought up. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Gaines. Councillor McKinnon and colleagues, would you like to make your case next?
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Gaines, for that presentation. It's our view that the decision may well breach the public sector equality duty, as described already by Councillor Gaines. I won't repeat the provisions of due regard because she did that fairly accurately. So I'll move straight on to the Equalities Impact Assessment, which Councillor Gaines defended a second ago. And if we can have a look at section 2 of that Equalities Impact Assessment, please. This is the section which asks which groups might be affected by the decision and how. Is it positively or negatively, and what sources of information have been used to determine that? So you've got a list of the protected groups down the left. So you've got age, disability, gender reassignment, etc., etc. In all bar one, the answer to the question, what might the effect be, is none. And in the disability section, there is a potential effect. It says that restricted access for parking in Newbury Town Centre between the hours of 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. could affect those people. So there is a recognition there that there could be an impact. And in the box which says information to support this, the Equalities Impact Assessment is very clear. It says there has been no survey undertaken to understand how many could be affected. And I think that's precisely what Councillor Gaines was saying. The proposed trial will give an opportunity to consult. But there's a recognition there at question 2 that there is a potential effect, and also a recognition or an admission, if you like, that there's been no survey undertaken to establish the extent of that effect. I think that's quite clear from that section. And then here's the inconsistency, and this is where I think it is particularly flawed. Just on the next section, number 3, results. Are there any aspects of the proposed decision, including how it's delivered or accessed, that could contribute to inequality? And the answer to that question given is no. That answer cannot be given what was in section 2, which recognises that there is a potential impact on those with a disability. It's admitted that the extent of that impact is unknown, but of course it could contribute to inequality. We don't know that yet because there's been no survey undertaken, but of course it could contribute to inequality. This is where the equality impact assessment is flawed. There is no knowledge, there's no survey, there's been no pre-consultation done to establish the effect on individual disabled residents' lives. And I appreciate that Councillor Gaines is saying, well, look, that's the purpose of an experiment. But this is at least a 6-month-long experiment before we take into account any consultation or information. And I don't think that's really acceptable on the back of this impact assessment. Okay, we're really just seeing what happens. Now, I think the answer to the question given in question 3, that's wrong. And I think on that basis, the equality impact assessment is flawed and it needs to be corrected. And I think Councillor Gaines is talking about that we're happy, or that the officers are happy that due regard has been given to those with protected characteristics. I don't see on the basis of this impact assessment, which after all is the evidence of that regard having been done. That's why this is here in the report. I think that is a flawed analysis and it's an unsound conclusion. So we think that, yes, during the executive meeting and when we discussed this item in full, we had lots of concerns about the impact on businesses and traffic, and that's not really the terms of the call-in. But on this, it would not be hugely onerous at all, I think, for the executive to just go and consult disabled residents before you implement the scheme. It's not going to cost a fortune. We're not talking about doing things at least until May next year as well. There's nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I think that's the course of action we'd like to see happen. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor McKinnon. Councillor Gaines, would you like to respond, please?
Certainly, Chairman. The ETRO is in operation for between 6 and 18 months. However, at any point during that time, we don't feel that we don't feel that the ETRO is working or the pedestrianisation is working. We can stop that. If we find that we do have extreme inequality during that period, we would immediately stop the pedestrianisation. That's one of the things that we have within our gift as part of that ETRO. That wouldn't be the same with the TRO. With the TRO, it is a traffic regulation order. It's in effect, and then but then on that basis, it actually is open to consultation prior to it. But the whole point of having an ETRO is that we don't want any preconceived ideas about how things might work. And what we want to do is be able to put it in operation and then make sure it does work. On the question of the EIA, there was an EIA carried out. The fact is, you mentioned earlier on. Sorry, let me just find my place. You mentioned earlier on that it wasn't sufficient. We've already admitted that actually probably there wasn't enough information within that executive report to give you confidence that the EIA was carried out. However, it was carried out.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gaines. Officers, do you have anything that you want to add, please? Mr. Winstanley.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that there are no, within the pedestrianisation zone, there's no residents that we are aware of that need access to their residential properties during the day, during the times that that live within that zone. So that wouldn't be a consideration. And that was my comment. Thanks.
Right. So if we move on to questions, I'll take Chairman's prerogative first and foremost. Would it not have been possible for us to have done some consultation? For example, I know we give out blue badges to people and presumably we have a database of people who have a blue badge. Could we have asked those people, for example, if they thought it would affect them?
Chairman, it's not something we've actually done at the moment. I'm just looking to see whether that's something that could be possible. I don't unfortunately, of course, that would actually then make this not an ETRO, it would actually do a pre-consultation.
Right.
We are intending to once we've got, whether we go through for an ETRO or a TRO, if it's an ETRO, we are intending to go out to stakeholders, such as blue badge holders, to actually to inform them of what's going on and find out if there are any issues about access. But as Mr. Winstanley says, I think there's just one person who actually lives in that whole zone who has a blue badge, and that person has 24/7 access to a route from their house to their vehicle.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. Did any officers want to make a comment on that point? You don't have to, but do you, Mr. Thomas?
I was just going to add that we hold information about blue badge holders, and I'm just thinking from a data protection point of view that I don't know that you can assume you can use that information to contact them about other matters. You have to be quite careful about how that data is held.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, do you have questions, comments that you'd like to make, please? Councillor Matharaj.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to start by saying that how this call-in is, I feel this has become a political opportunism and kind of obstructive politics being played at. Not going into the merits and demerits of the pedestrianisation itself, we need to remember this is not pedestrianisation. This is an extension of ours. And this is not the first time a pedestrianisation has been invoked. If the opposite members can remember, the 23rd June 2020, during their administration, there was a temporary pedestrianisation to enable COVID restrictions, to enable social distancing. And that ended on 27th September. So it ran for pretty much 3-4 months. And I don't recollect or recall any of the discussions being had at that time to have this kind of assessment or kind of the nature of the call-in being that time. It was allowed as a trial. It was still a trial, and still now it is trial to assess the impact of the business, equalities, like disability, all of these can be assessed, and particularly this commission, Scrutiny Commission, can assess that one at a later stage. Number second is, if we have to use the Scrutiny Commission to assess this one, it could be during the trial itself, we could see how the trial data is being used, how the trial is being conducted. Is it taking all factors of disability and equality into the parameter can be assessed? All this can be assessed during that time. It is simply clear to me, reading all of this, it's a kind of obstructive one to kind of delay this process by any kind of quoting facts here and there, cherry picking. So I would say it's like this should not have been called in, and I would oppose this for the very fact that this is a second trial. So there's been a trial before and it happened, and this is the second trial in my view, and that's my view. It's like it should be opposed.
Thank you very much. For the members, Councillor Reid.
I'm just thinking, trying to reflect on how, the difference between TRO, ETRO, and the whole point of it being experimental trial. And I'm just trying to reflect in my own experience in life between, programs of work where traditionally people might remember the waterfall approach, where you got all the requirements up front and you did all that consultation with stakeholders and then you designed everything, and then you built it and then you released it thinking that you had all the knowledge behind you. I'm just reflecting on that, I'm sure Fujitsu had the same idea when they delivered Horizon. They'd gone through all that consultation, et cetera, and yet it turned out to be a disaster. The more modern way of doing things is called agile. When you're delivering a project, is you experiment, you build something, you release it out to the users, you get that feedback, and then you build upon that. And sometimes it's called fail early. So as we said, with the experimental traffic regulation order, we can stop that before the end of the 6 months. And again, to me, that's the more modern way of doing things. Release it out to the end users, the public, get them to really reflect on, well, that's what it used to be like beforehand, this is what it's like now. They can give a genuine, experience-led response from which we as a council can learn and then respond to. So to me, the difference between the old-fashioned way of doing it all up front doesn't really work. The modern way, where we've got the lessons learned on how to deliver projects is really, to me, the agile, the experimental ETRO approach.
Thank you. Councillor Sumner online.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite surprised by some of the comments that I've just listened to, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. To say that this is a purely political move, I think is outrageous. The consideration is of the welfare of our residents, Chair. And should we not make sure that that is part and parcel of everything that we're doing? Surely that's what we're there for. I do want to just emphasise the point of the ETRO and the turning off of the ETRO. I'd like confirmation that is the case first and foremost, and that it doesn't need another application to the Secretary of State. But also, if it's turned off, is it turned off? I'm minded of the reason that it wasn't turned on to start with was the potential issues at which came into effect, in all honesty, through roadworks just out of town, Kings Road area, absolutely necessary roadworks, but for a very good reason would have had massive impact had this been in place. We need to be very clear. Our residents need to be clear. Our businesses need to be clear. And I'm not just talking about the businesses in Northbrook Street and the surrounding area. I'm talking about transport companies. I'm talking about taxi companies. Need to be very, very clear what they can and can't do at any given point. Otherwise, they're all going to be faced with numerous problems. And finally, just that the pandemic, to bring the pandemic into it, it was a completely different scenario. Absolutely, as I said when we had the executive meeting, drove out the issue with this when consultation was done, that the town and the surrounding area were split right down the middle between who was supporting it and who wasn't supporting it. That's why consultation is important before we start to put anything in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. I noticed Councillor Cottontan, but if I may ask Councillor Gaines and officers, can you respond to Councillor Sumner's question, please, about the ETRO?
Of course, Chair.
Thank you.
Oh, did you want to do that? No, okay. No, Councillor Sumner, absolutely. The council has the discretion to choose to stop enforcing the order at any point. It does not need to go back to the Secretary of State. The only reason we're getting the Secretary of State involved is because it goes over that period, the period of closure that actually means it needs to be either a TRO or an ETRO, and that's what we're actually discussing with them at this current time. So absolutely, the council has discretion to choose to stop, or in some circumstances, amend the order as it goes through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gaines. Councillor Cotton.
Thank you, Chair. I always believe that councillors bring here their experience and knowledge. I actually opened the original pedestrian phase in 1999, and there were people with trepidation then. A very similar exercise that has been carried out by the executive was done, and there were no objections, and that was a big chunk of the day. I can also say that my mother lived with me for 5 years, and we regularly took her into Newbury shopping, and we always used the spaces, which are very, very convenient and very, very easily used in Northbrook car park. So, I mean, they even provide electric scooters there, which was a real boon on top of that. So, because she had a blue card, of course. But also, I would say that, since that time, in the last 20 odd years, I really don't remember seeing any blue card holders parking in Northbrook Street itself, ever, because of the facilities that are there already. That's not even taking into account those on the eastern side of the town. So I feel very relaxed about this. I think it's a good thing to do. I'm really glad, and we thank Councillor Gaines for pointing out that if there is any major issues, it can be stopped, and it can be stopped rapidly. And I think, you know, if you go back to the pandemic, well, were there objections raised about disabled access then? That would be interesting to see. I certainly wasn't aware. I hand over to the officer who may have an answer for me.
Yep, Mr. Winstanley.
We did receive some representation when we sort of introduced the 24-hour pedestrianisation during the pandemic, but that was mainly relating to access during the day, so before 10 o'clock. When in fact that was related to access before 10 o'clock, not in the evening.
Okay. And why were people particularly concerned about access before 10 o'clock?
So they could access shops.
Okay, right. So actual people going to shops, not delivery of stuff to shops before they opened.
Well, that was the representation we have from blue badge holders and
Okay,
yeah,
I see.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Wollaston.
I totally understand the aspiration, but could Councillor Gaines explain to me why the one-way system suggestion in 6.3 of the original report was dismissed so easily? Its advantages, it seems to me, are it allows al fresco dining and drinking in Market Square, linking into the wharf. It allows disabled access by drop-off at either end of Market Square, reduces traffic congestion, eases the issue of deliveries in Northbrook Street and Bartholomew Street. So can the executive be asked perhaps to review this option? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. We did consider various different options. My concern with the one-way system is that people such as people that are blind and deaf may not differentiate between what side of the road they're on, whether there's traffic coming backwards and forwards or not. If you've got one-way traffic, then you've got at least one part of that carriageway that's actually got motor vehicles on it. That's dangerous, especially since Northbrook Street doesn't have any curbs. You can't differentiate between being on a pavement or being on the curb. You've got traffic going through. People are not sure whether that's actually something they can do. So having a complete pedestrianisation seemed the best course of action.
Any other comments? Councillor Reid.
I wonder if I may raise a question just to confirm, and then on the assumption that my question comes back with the affirmative, just a little bit of observation. So, John, sorry, Mr. Winstanley, apologies. The current position we've got with pedestrianisation, is that called shared space in the sort of parlance?
In terms of the levels of the carriageway and the footway, you could argue it's shared space, but I wouldn't call it shared space in the purest sense. Shared space is where you have motor vehicles and pedestrians mingling freely, but that's not the case outside of the pedestrianised times because the predominant flow of traffic is the car. And so pedestrians can't mingle freely with the predominant flow.
Thank you for that, Mr. Winstanley. And I wanted that confirmation because I noticed from the British Transport Research Lab, which is not too far away at Crowthorne, it noted that flows below 90 vehicles per hour allowed mingling when it was above 110. Their research found that actually pedestrians don't feel particularly comfortable. I also saw there was further criticism where there are vehicles going through there. Also from the RNIB, the fact that people, blind people or partially sighted people, don't feel very comfortable in those situations when there is fast moving or large amounts of traffic, especially where they can't feel the edge of the curb, which there isn't in this particular case, although there is a change in some of the, obviously the structure in the ground, which maybe they'd be able to pick up with an appropriate stick. I also saw that actually in areas where there are vehicles and pedestrians, actually older people, in particular women, find the shared space, although we're not using that term, can feel it's intimidating. and obviously pedestrians are giving way to the cars. So I think the whole, I don't think it's to be able to do the consultation up front and just say we're missing the consultation on the mobility side of things. I think we've also got to think about lots of other disabilities out there, especially as 24% of the UK population have a disability. So again, I think it's down to let's try it and let's get that consultation back where people can actually say in their real experience, what is that Northbrook, that Bartholomew Street experience if there is no traffic, or and then obviously their experience of where there is traffic, which they are experiencing at the moment. So again, I really cannot see why the full consultation would get us at the front and the TRO would actually give us the right answer. I personally think that's the whole point of an experiment. You actually find a genuine result, not a hypothesis.
Okay, Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thanks to everyone who's spoken thus far. I think there is a bit of a risk of members of the Commission slightly missing the point here in terms of, whether there is a benefit of consultation or not, the benefits of the experiment or consulting before you implement it. Can I get back to the matter at hand, which is the Equalities Impact Assessment? And I'd like to ask Councillor Gaines a question. Can you please look at question 3 of the EIA, which asks, are there any aspects of the proposed decision, including how it's delivered access, that could contribute to inequality? The answer to that question is no. Are you happy that that answer is correct?
Councillor Gaines, would you like to respond? Sure, okay.
Thank you, Chairman. It's conceded that it could, but there is no evidence to suggest it does or it would.
Thank you. That is, though, not an answer to my question. Do you think the answer to that question as being no is the correct answer?
Yes.
I'm staggered to hear you say that, despite your conference with officers. In question 2 of the EIA, the recognition that this could contribute to inequality is right there in the Equalities Impact Assessment. It is there in black and white. What might the effect be on disabled residents? It's there, restricted access for parking. I ask you again, not ask you again, ask you a different question. How can that question be answered no? Why is the answer no when in question 2 it's answered yes?
The impact could have an impact. However, we don't know the impact, and therefore it's not guaranteed that it will have an impact.
Absolutely agreed. But the question is, are there any aspects of the decision that could contribute to inequality? Surely the answer to that, as you've just said, has to be yes. And I'll build on that. You said that you'd conceded that there's not enough information that the Equality Impact Assessment had been carried out correctly. Well, I agree with that, given this inconsistency.
Can I say that that's actually not in this report? I did stipulate that there wasn't sufficient impact assessment, equality impact assessment in this report. There was sufficient impact assessment done during the
I agreed. I was about to continue quoting you there,
okay.
Denise, Councillor Gaines, to say, but you're assuring me that it was. I think that this is the key issue here. not whether I'm being political, Councillor Armitage. I wasn't expecting to be accused of that tonight, but I guess we're always going to be accused of something, aren't we? Or am I trying to delay it? This experiment's not due to start till May. If everyone in the Commission agrees with me tonight and you have to go and shockingly ask disabled residents what they think before you do it in May, it's not going to delay anything. It's still going to happen in May. But the key thing is there is a reason, colleagues, and let's never mind the political badges. There is a reason why these equality impact assessments are required to be appended to each executive report. And I think council proposal as well, because it's in the Equalities Act. This is the evidence that equalities have been considered, that due regard has been made to the needs of disabled, racial, sexual characteristics. Councillor Gaines has just said that in this report, the equalities impact assessment, and I'm paraphrasing, is not good enough. And she's assuring me that somewhere else in the council, not evidence in this report, it has been done. Forgive me for not having full confidence in that. I'm sure she's being honest and she believes it. But if it's not in this report, the executive shouldn't have made the decision. That's why these impact assessments are appended to the report. You can easily solve this problem by not delaying anything, go away, redo this, speak to disabled residents, because I think you'd have to do this assessment properly. The amount of mental gymnastics being given by some colleagues to avoid asking disabled residents what they might think is quite bizarre. And I'll say again that this equality impact assessment is clearly flawed. And if any colleagues on the Commission want to explain to me why it's not flawed, I'd love to hear from them. But that's my position at the moment. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McKinnon. Councillor Gaines, would you like to respond to that?
Certainly, Chairman. So the very first statement I made before I spoke to this evening was that in consultation with Highways and the EIA, due regard has been given to our public sector equality duty under the Equalities Act of 2010, Section 149. There has been no breach of council duties under Equality Acts 2010. The Highways Department Equality Impact Assessment is robust enough to deal with the requirements of an experimental traffic order, but also, experimental traffic regulation order, but also recognise that further information could have been provided evidence. It's not incorrect. It just means that there wasn't as much information as that report as perhaps there could have been. It doesn't mean that information is incorrect. It doesn't mean information was missed out deliberately. It was done purely and utterly. We could have provided it further, and I've already accepted that as part of this committee. Another EIA is not required. A consultation process is not required at this stage, but acknowledges that 6 months consultation will take place starting on the day of the ETRO comes into force.
Thank you. Councillor McKinnon, if it's quick, because I've got a few other people who want to speak.
Yeah, thanks. I don't think Councillor Gaines really addressed any of those points. The answer to question 3 in the Equalities Impact Assessment is clearly not correct, and I think everyone would accept that. Surely. And again, just a quick one. The Highways Department's EIA, is this Equality Impact Assessment I'm looking at now, or is that a different one? Because if it's this one that I'm looking at now that was attached to the original executive report, it's internally contradictory and it is incorrect. But is there another one that we are not seeing?
Sorry, Chairman, no.
Thank you for that. Right, I've got 3 other people who've indicated they'd like to speak. Councillor Matharaj.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to highlight that we are equally concerned about this equalities and disabilities. I'm not suggesting that we should ignore that. And that's, I think, the perception I'm getting. The reason I called out, it is politically opportunistic, and you validated it, Councillor McKinnon, because even after the clarification from the officers from Councillor Dane, it's clear that it's just about making sure is that a tick box or a offline clarification for sufficient rather than just a call in, and thereby potential delays to this process. it is clear. It is clear and obvious because there could be just another call in of another decision. So moving away from that, what I believe is it's not just a trial. It's, as Councillor Gaines said, it's a trial plus consultation, and there is every opportunity in this commission to question that, to question the findings, to question the data, to question the formulation of this data and all the parameters. I'm absolutely fine with that. All I'm not clear is just an offline check with officers or with Councillor Gaines could have avoided this entire thing. And that is what I feel it's posturing. It's posturing just to bring this topic every time there is a extension of pedestrianization. And just another point, this just discussing on the parking access. This consultation, in my belief, could bring about positive outcomes for the disabled, like blind, for people with deafness. They could potentially benefit from this one because so that is what it will come up in this consultation. So so it will be part of the trial. That's what we are trying to make. That is clear from what Councillor Gaines has said, and I'm not going to repeat that one, and I don't want to be kind of misunderstood. We are all concerned about the disabilities, and there should be consultation, and that is what is being done now. And let's there be positive outcome, and we in the Scrutiny Commission, if there is option, we can discuss all of those analysis and findings, and we can just kind of counter and give constructive things to implement rather than obstructive ones.
Thank you. Councillor Dick and then Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chairman. The gentleman opposite me, Councillor Cottam, said that we should bring our personal experience to council business, and that's one of the things I'm delighted to do. So my professional life, I looked after a number of schools which had specialist facilities for disabled children, many varieties, something we're very proud of. So I have good knowledge of the disabled community. And of course, many of their parents and older relatives were also disabled. And they used to say to me that the school was a brilliant environment, and they thanked us for it. And thank you to West Berkshire Council for all the money that you invested in me to do that. Appreciated that. But they said, but the world out there is a hard place. It doesn't care. Once the child's 16 and he's gone, there's very little. And that's what concerns me. So, and it's not just people who live in the area we're talking about, it's people who want to come into the area we talk about. And I know from my personal experience that Newbury, much more than Thatcham actually, became in their minds a no-go area because they couldn't easily access the facilities. And let's face it, Newbury is a brilliant city, our town rather. It's got so much more than Thatcham, for example. And yet a lot of these people didn't feel able to come in. And this new setup in the town centre is going to exacerbate that problem. They won't be able to get close. We say it's not a problem, or it might be a problem, but we don't think so. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. We don't know. How do we know? Have we asked these people? There's not a lot of them. And we've heard previously in this room, and you've made me refer to this. We've heard the other side saying, oh, there's no democracy left. The government dictate to West Berkshire and it's awful, it's awful, it's awful. What are you proposing to do your citizens? You're proposing to say to your citizens, here we are. This is our latest idea. It's a great idea. There you go. If you don't like it, well, that's tough. We'll worry about that afterwards. I would say it's neither liberal nor democratic, nor sensitive to the disabled members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dick. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. And thank you there from Councillor Dick. I believe the schools that you ran had science departments, and very good science departments. And science is based on a thought, a hypothesis. And then you try it out. And if it's incorrect because of the actual results, what you see in front of your eyes and your real experience, you then change that hypothesis, or you change how that theory works. until eventually you get something that actually models reality. Also, Councillor McKinnon raised that there wouldn't be a delay. Well, actually, that experiment, well, you'd just be able to do the hypothesis in May if it was a TRO, but you wouldn't be able to actually start it until November when the actual TRO starts. So that is a delay. I'm sorry. You know, the experiment can start earlier in May. I'm afraid that's what it says in front of me if you look in section 5. Also, you seem quite, what would I say, pedantic about this question 3, yes, no. But actually, that yes, no answer, life's not like that and disabilities aren't like that, as Councillor Dick will find out. There's a whole range of disabilities and a spectrum of those, and blindness can affect people in different ways, mobility can affect people in different ways, depending on your age group, whether you're a child, working age, pensioner. I genuinely don't think the TRO consultation is going to get us to the right answer. I think it's going to send us down a cul-de-sac, potentially the wrong answer. The experiments, learn, fail fast if it's going to be fail, or see if it's a real success and gets that real life feedback is the modern way to go. And it's the way that, you know, big programs deliver, from my personal experience. And those big programs of delivery, you know, everything up front, as I said before, you know, we're living it at the moment with the horrendous things that Fujitsu delivered as a program of waterfall, big consultation up front. And it takes a long time, a long, long time for those results and the effects of those to drive out. So I think the executive have made a balanced decision, and on balance, it was the right way to go. Do the experiment, find out, get people's real life feedback, especially during May, when it's going to be the highest footfall. Because at the moment, it's not many people want to go into the town centre because it's freezing cold. You're not going to want to sit out on a table outside. To me, the timescales, the experiment, it just feels right to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reid. I've got another question, and then I'm inclined to bring in Councillor Marsh because I'm conscious we've gone round a few times. Just a question for me. It was mentioned by Councillor Gaines that if there was an issue, the ETRO could cease pretty much immediately. What kind of scenario would you envisage? I mean, if one disabled person came to the council and said that it had caused them a problem, would that be enough for the council to take a pause? Or would it have to be several people? Have you got any sense of how serious it would have to be?
The benefit, thank you, Chair, the benefit of the ETRO is that the minute we start the ETRO, we start the consultation. So therefore, we'll get feedback very quickly. And I'm sure that anybody that's got a loud voice will actually come very quickly to the fore and tell us what we're doing wrong. If it would have to be something we would look at, we would assess. Obviously, if one person was saying it was wrong, but we had 10 people saying they loved it, then obviously that wouldn't immediately stop us from doing it. If we had 100 people say they didn't like it at all and nobody said they liked it, that make us stop and think again. But as I said, it's not just about stopping it. We can also amend the order to change some of the parameters within that order at any time as well. Providing we've got the order going forward, we can do that within that 18 months. We're looking at 6 months initially, but the ETROs can last for up to 18 months.
Okay. And just a supplementary to that, is it going to be made clear to the public who is leading the consultation exercise so that if anyone does have a problem, they know who to go to? Because I'm conscious in a lot of situations, people don't know whether they go to the portfolio holder, do they go to a senior manager, do they go to an officer in a particular team? When we do our communications, is that going to be made really clear to people?
Yes, it will be. We've had the budget consultations, you know, We've had quite a lot of responses from that. We did the parking survey and only got 600. But what we did there was we put QR codes in car parks. We actually did it on, we put things on the bulletins, we put things in libraries. We did paper copies of things for the parking survey. Still only got 600 responses. So we will do our best to make sure that we actually hit everybody. We access everybody that we need to access. And I will take into account, before Councillor McKinnon asked me, I will take into account any social media that I'm actually aware of.
Thank you for that. Councillor Marsh, would you like to make your comments?
Thank you, Chair. I do appreciate it. I'm not a member of the Commission, but I do appreciate the opportunity to talk on this issue. I've been a long-standing campaigner on this issue, and I'm also a member of Newbury Town Council, which incidentally strongly supports the proposed experiment. I'm also one of only 2 members present who represent a Newbury ward, so I probably spend more time in the town than most people here. I have to ask, it's on.
Councillor Marsh, could you put it a bit closer to you? Sorry.
I don't need to repeat all that, do I?
No. If you just bring it close to you.
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Okay. I have to ask, if the Conservatives are so concerned about disabled people being discriminated against, why aren't they campaigning to open the town centre to traffic from 10 till 5? Or is it just in the evening that they think disabled people need to gain access to Northbrook Street? Just to echo the comments of the other Newbury ward member here, Councillor Amatoraj, I do think it's a political smokescreen, and I'll say that. Why I think that, because after years of promoting active travel, the government suddenly U-turned after it won a by-election and now opposes 20 miles an hour speed limits and traffic reduction measures because they think there might be a few votes in fighting on behalf of motorists in an imaginary war. And evidence for that locally is that the 2 Conservative candidates for Newbury Central Ward in last May's election suddenly announced halfway through the campaign, contrary to West Berkshire Council policy at the time, which they were running, that they were opposed to this kind of experiment. So, turning to the matters under discussion, if you actually listen to groups and experts who campaign on these issues, such as Sustrans, the aim that we should all be sharing is to make navigating town centres on foot or by wheelchair or while pushing a baby buggy accessible, safe and attractive. They don't argue against pedestrian-only streets, which after all are much safer for everyone, and particularly for people, as has been touched on, with visual or hearing disabilities. According to surveys, disabled pedestrians make 30% fewer walking trips than non-disabled people into town centres. It's a problem of accessibility, and you don't solve it by telling them that they can drive everywhere. You have to make accessibility the priority, which means more ramps, more dropped curbs, well-maintained pavements, wider pavements, careful placement of street furniture, accessible traffic signals, and similar measures. We're not hearing much about campaigning for that in this sort of rather technical argument about one clause of one exercise. So none of those things are incompatible with removing traffic from the town centre in the evening. And in fact, the 2 approaches complement each other, in my view. Now, this doesn't mean that the council should not consult disabled people about these proposals. Of course it should, but I do hope that the portfolio holder and the officers will take on board that during this trial period, it's those wider issues as well. It's not just about where you can drive at whatever time of day you can or night you can drive there. It's about these wider issues, which I think are much more relevant to many, if not most, disabled people. By the way, the trial period, which has been a lot's been said about, was suggested by the very town centre master plan that the then Conservative Council Executive portfolio holder, Councillor Ross McKinnon, signed off on 10th of February 2022, the very same master plan that called for, quote, removing general traffic from Newbury town centre and, quote, a pedestrianised core which reduces vehicular access. The very same master plan, since you were asking about consultation and figures, the very same master plan that was subject to 2 extensive consultation exercises, one of which attracted more than 4,000 responses. And enjoyed widespread support from the people of Newbury and West Berkshire who participated. It's true that not much happened in the 2 years of Tory administration that followed that, But really, to hear Councillor Wollaston say, why have you dismissed the one-way system, one proposal, one in the document? Why have you dismissed it? You were in power. What were you doing for 2 years, Howard? You were in power. You dismissed it. You didn't do anything about it. They're at least trying. So better late than never. I just want to answer something, pick up on a point that Councillor Sommer made as well. He talked about this is about the welfare of our residents. Well, yes. What about young people? Councillor Dick refers to young people. Now, I've taken a young child to music lessons at what used to be Hogan's, now the Good Vibes Academy, and other children were queuing to get into that that academy to do their music lessons, breathing in the fumes for about 20 minutes of all the vehicles, the vans and the cars outside in Bartholomew Street, queuing, waiting for the barrier to drop, the bollard to drop, so that they could drive through the rat run that is Bartholomew Street and Northbrook Street. I've accompanied a group of cubs and beavers trying to cross Mansion House Street in the winter in the dark at 5:01, just after the cars have started coming racing round that blind corner from Northbrook Street. What about them? What about older people? What about people with asthma? Where are the priorities here? We need to do a lot to consult and take into account people with disabilities, but there are a lot of other groups that are affected by this, and the policies that have pertained so far, apart from during that window of 10 till 5, are damaging to the health of all those groups of people. I'm not going to talk about business because it's not relevant to this, but this policy is good for business. It's been good all over the world for cities and towns that have turned their town centres or the shopping streets into traffic-free areas. I'm almost there. I'm almost there, Ross.
Just a quick point of order for the chairman, if that's all right. Now, Councillor Marsh is not a member of the commission, and he speaks at chairman's discretion, which is absolutely at your call. But he has spoken for a great deal longer than any of the individual commission members. I wonder if he's reaching the end of his submission.
Yeah, he's indicated
I am.
it's nearly
I've got
finished.
3 sentences left, Councillor McGinn.
And a lot of people have spoken several times as well. Yeah.
And this speech lasts 5 minutes. I've timed it. A long time ago, a Conservative Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, said we had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to shift attitudes away from reliance on the car. I urge the executive to stick to its guns and not give in to those who don't even live here, but want to keep Northbrook Street as a rat run rather than work together to create an environment we could all enjoy. Pedestrianisation, extending pedestrianisation is safer for everyone, it's cleaner for everyone, it's quieter for everyone, it's healthier for everyone, it's more pleasant for everyone. It'll bring people to the town, it's popular with residents, it's popular with visitors, it's good for business, and it's the right thing for Newbury. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Councillor McKinnon, you indicated you'd like to speak again.
I did, and thank you for coming back to me again. Councillor Armitage, that is a political intervention and a political submission, and a very well delivered one. David, you've been practicing. It does not really address anything at hand in terms of the call-in, which is about the adequacy of the equalities impact assessment, but I enjoyed listening to it regardless. I will just very briefly come back to the matter at hand, please. Councillor Reid mentioned, he accused me of being pedantic in being concerned about the difference between a yes and a no. Guilty as charged, Councillor Reid. I am absolutely pedantic as to the answer to the very important question: are there any aspects of this decision that could contribute to inequality? I suspect that every member should be very pedantic about that, because it's a fundamentally important question. I would just like to finish off by asking officers if they consider that that question has been answered correctly.
Mr. Winstanley?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I do consider that it's been answered correctly. In our view, there's no evidence that this is going to contribute towards inequality. The impact of the decision will be similar for all people who access the town centre at the moment, so it will restrict access as it does during the day. So as there is no evidence that it's going to impact on inequality, we felt that was the answer that was given. But we will keep it under review, and the best way to do that is to implement it as an experimental traffic regulation order, which is part of the mitigation for this.
Thanks for that. And I would just caution that absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence, of course. And finally, Chairman, perhaps a bit of a clarification. What we're proposing here is not to scrap the ETRO and go for a TRO. We're happy is not the right word, but we accept that the executive wants to go with an ETRO. All we're suggesting is that we consult disabled residents first. So that's why I'm saying there shouldn't really be a delay, because we're not switching from one stream to the next. But I think we were perhaps at cross purposes with that.
And when we move to a vote, I will clarify the precise wording of the call-in that we're going to vote on. I've got 4 or 5 more people who want to speak, and then I suggest that after that we move to a vote. Councillor Gaines.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to clarify a couple of things, I spoke earlier on about the EIA, the Equality Impact Assessment, and I said that it was provided, the item that was provided for the decision was quite brief and didn't include details of all the factors and details considered by the Highways Department before their professional recommendation was given to proceed with the decision. However, in relation to the potential impact, it's noted that the trial extension would only relate to an extension of the current situation, and the relevant roads are already prohibited motor vehicles from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. The decision called in simply extends these hours to cover 5 till 11 p.m. All motor vehicles, with the limited exceptions, are prohibited between 10 and 5 and have been since 2011, as we've already heard. Multiple permanent orders have come into force to pedestrianise the relevant roads. A full and robust consultation was previously completed in relation to all of the relevant roads affected by the proposed decision, albeit affecting different hours of the day. Whilst this is not conclusive, it's relevant and would contradict the implication that the expected impact is completely unknown. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pemberton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have to be honest, I've found the whole sort of tone of the debate this evening quite depressing, and I get that we're here to debate a call-in on a technical point around a piece of legislation, and there's been lots and lots of talk about the answers that have been given in this equality impact assessment. I understand all of that, but Councillor McKinnon, question 3 of the EQIA asks a very specific question. Could this decision by the executive contribute to inequality? The answer states there is no evidence that disabled people being dropped off or parking within the pedestrianised area is a common occurrence. Now, unless you've got evidence to refute that, I think we take that as read, we take it at face value, and accept that none of us, or the vast majority of us in this room, are an expert on the Equalities Act or the Traffic Regulation Act, which we're using to bring this experimental traffic regulation order into effect. And look, a lot of the questions to Councillor Gaines this evening has been around, okay, well, what happens if we get negative feedback, and what happens if this, and what happens if people aren't happy? What if that feedback is positive? What if the vast majority of people actually support this move, and are happy with the pedestrian hours being extended? The way that some members in this chamber are talking, we'd be forgiven for thinking that it's not already pedestrianised for a large part of the day. All we're doing is asking to extend those hours further. And, to Councillor Dick's point, I mean, I understand that it's hard for disabled people to access certain areas of the town, but there are parallel streets to Bartholomew Street. It is possible for disabled people to access that area by different means. The sky is not going to fall in tomorrow if all of a sudden cars can't drive up and down that section of road between 5 in the evening and 11 in the evening. And, the whole point of this experimental traffic regulation order is to consult as we go. I think we just need to take the wording of the EQI at face value, implement the order, see what the feedback is. And you know what? Hopefully people will like it, because it creates a nice space for people to enjoy in the evening.
Thank you, councillor Cottam, and then I think we'll move to a vote after that. Okay, councillor Dick, and then we'll move to a vote after that. Okay. Yeah, we'll have a vote on the wording of the call-in. Thank you, councillor Dick.
Thank you. And this is a question to the portfolio holder. I didn't come here this evening for a lecture about science teaching. I didn't come here for a lecture about modern methods and ancient methods of management. I didn't come here for a lecture about petty politics, which is what I call them. Some people call them party politics. I call them petty politics. I would just like some indication from the portfolio holder that you are more sensitive than it sounds like to the needs of the disabled community, and that you would undertake either a very direct and active check with them, with that group and groups before you start your experiment, or as soon as you do, but an active consultation with those very needy and very worthy groups. That's all I'm here for. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Dick. Councillor Gaines, would you like to respond?
As I've said, I think at least once this evening, councillor Dick, yes, the ETRO is a consultation which will start on the day the ETRO starts. The consultation will start at that point. Relevant parties will be informed. We'll use all possible communication methods to get that message out, to get the consultation information back. It will carry on for the whole duration of that consultation, of that ETRO. Should that ETRO be terminated prematurely, then obviously the ETRO will cease. But yes, we will talk to people, as I said, right at the very beginning in the original executive that I actually presented this thing for, that we actually are willing to consult with our residents, and very keen to consult with our residents, but only within the realm of the ETRO. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. I think I'm going to move to a vote now. We've had an hour of fairly robust and detailed debate on this, so thank you very much for your contributions. I'll just remind you of the wording in 3.4 of the report that we have before us this evening. It says the members of the council who submitted the call-in request propose that the following alternative course of action should be followed. The decision is not implemented until the equality impact assessment is reperformed and corrected, and residents with disabilities are properly consulted, so that the council can establish the extent to which the proposed decision may contribute to inequality. So that is the summary of the call-in, and that's what we need to vote on. So I'll be asking you to vote for or against whether we accept the wording of that call-in. And just to remind you that the options available to us, we either resolve that we're going to confirm the executive decision this evening, in which case it would be implemented with immediate effect, or we refer the matter back. If we accept the call-in, that would be referred back to the executive. So is everyone clear what we're voting on? Okay, so can I take those who are in favour of the call-in, please? Thank you. Those who are against the call-in, please? Thank you. And I will abstain. Okay, so the call-in vote is lost. And so that means option A, so confirming the executive decision, in which case it would be implemented with immediate effect. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for your contributions this evening. Thank you to officers who have come along to answer the questions. Thank you to Councillor Gaines for your time this evening as well, and also to Councillor Marsh for coming along and joining us. I would encourage other members of the council to come along and join in with the scrutiny process, because after all, Councillor McKinnon said he enjoyed listening to it. So yeah, good. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. If you could make sure that you leave your area nice and neat and tidy and remain seated until the meeting has closed on Zoom, please. Thank you. Thank you.